finally ready to do a walkthrough around the ancient world. This is what we're going to use with our kids for our homeschool year next year. I wrote it specifically for them, but I had so many people ask if they could join us next year that I have made it available in my shop too. It's still on pre-order. I think within the next week and a half, it's all going to be finalized. A delightful friend volunteered to edit it all, so it will have a second set of eyes to make sure everything's ironed out, looking good, and then we'll get started. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you the books and the layout and the way that everything looks so you can decide if it's a good fit for your family or not. I'm kind of a bad marketer in that I would rather you find what works for your family than tell you you should use what we're using. I know this is going to work well for us, but it's up to you to decide if it works well for your family. So I'm just going to point my camera down and we'll get this tour started. All right, so this is what it looks like, and the inspiration came because I started substitute teaching at our kids' Charlotte Mason 2-day-a-week program, and seeing all of the additional subjects that were included made me want to do that even more at home. And so the first thing you will notice when you flip open, I have an index of all of the things that we will be learning during the school year. Some people have asked if it's history specific because of the ancient aspect of things, but the way that I see it is history is tied to science and history is tied to geography and so many of the other subjects that really it weaves all in together. Instead of being history specific, you get all of the subjects, but you get them in a way that it all makes sense because it's building on to other things that your kid is already learning. And so one of the things that scientists have studied is that when we try to remember something, if it has a hook or something else that it can tie to and connect to, it makes it easier for us to remember. So we're connecting that to what we're learning. So you learn one thing and then other things all hook onto that peg. So we've got month 1 here. And this is immediately what you're going to see when you open up. I've got our list of resources and the readings that we'll be doing. And all of the books are listed here. And so the way it's going to show up in yours, because this is the first printing and it's not the final version. So here you can see like I have pink and blue things. That was me checking to see if every book is available on YouTube or the library. The first ones are not done that way though, because those are going to be things you're going to use for the whole month. So I recommend either getting it in a hard copy where the things that are pink and blue are something you'll be doing 1 or 2 days, and I do not recommend buying that. So one of the things I see among homeschool families, like every book listed, they purchase it, and then it ends up being so expensive. And so I wanted to be able to save people as much money as possible by listing out which ones should be purchased because you're going to use them over and over again, and which things are just going to be a one-time use. And so if you can get it in a digital format, that would be best. And so many of these books are available on YouTube. One thing that I did is if it wasn't available on the library or on YouTube, I tried to provide an alternate resource that would be, and so it could be easier to find. So maybe not ideal and not what we're hoping to use for our family, but it was something that could still work for you and your family. And then there's some free reading suggestions. These are books that I'm going to encourage Keaton to read throughout the year. Maybe not all of them, because I don't know if all of them are going to be big hits. And I put a tab here, like if you find something that your kid loved or one of them your kid didn't love, like please just let me know. And then we have our supply list. Over here, we have our readings. These will also be things that you'll use for copywork, and the hymn can be used for copywork or just learning to sing it, but that's listed there. Okay, so next we have our weekly layout. And so what you might notice is that there are 3 subjects here and 3 subjects here. So every day we will do Bible and hymn, and every day we'll read a section from a fiction reading that has to do with the part of the world that we're studying. Every day we will have Copywork, but then one day a week we'll have science, one day a week we'll have history, one day a week we'll have geography, and then every day we're going to practice free reading, then one day a week we'll have art, one day a week we'll have nature study, one day a week we'll have handicraft, and then every day has a toddler time activity connected to it. All right, so what does our basket look like to make that happen? So I have here our family's basket. I'm gonna move some things around here so you can see. All right, so we've got, just move this. Okay. So every morning we're gonna start by singing our hymn, and that's listed. And then we are going to do our 24 family ways. And in that, down here. All right, 24 family ways, and every day we're going to do, each week we're going to do 3 of these unless you decide to use it the days of the week that aren't lesson planned, so the day that you would do co-op and your catch-up day. And so you have day 1, you have your ask a question, read the Bible, talk about it, and then pray. And I really loved it because it's very simple. You're really only reading 4 or 5 verses from the Bible, but it does get your kid into the actual Bible instead of a Bible supplement. And so this will be used every month except for the last month. And then for our family, we're going to be going over catechism. You can swap this out with whatever devotional or whatever Bible study you're wanting to do with your kids. I wrote this one on the lesson plans because this is what we're using for our family. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna have a chapter of fiction reading. So for month 1, that's gonna be The Golden Goblet, and you'll read 1 chapter a day. The first 2-3 months, it'll be between 2 books, and then it will be a book a month for the rest of the year. And this book is based in whatever continent we're on. And so we're starting off with archaeology in ancient Egypt. And so we've got the Golden Goblet for that. When we move to China, we have Chinese history stories just to make the continent come alive. What was it like in the ancient days for that? For the early Americas, if that was really hard to find, but I found this book, The Runner in the Sun, that I'm really looking forward to reading and discovering with our kids. And then for Europe, we have Greek myths, and each of those continents will have 2 separate books. And so I do have book recommendations for each of those for a different book to go with it also. So that'll be for our fiction reading to help make that part of the world and ancient history come alive. Then we have our Copywork. I've not seen anybody do this. I think my kids are gonna love it, and I hope yours do too. But 2 of the days of the week, we're going to do actual Copywork. And I thought I put the ancient, here it is. Okay, but since we're studying ancient Egypt, to help make it come alive, Copywork, the goal in partiality at least, is to get the muscle strength strong enough to be able to have neat penmanship. And so a fun way to do that is to color a detailed picture. And so I have these, I sourced, there is Life in Ancient Mexico, Life in Ancient Egypt, and then also these ancient Chinese fashions for your students to do a color Copywork page, and then the other 2 days a week we'll do actual Copywork. But I just thought that would be a fun way to switch it up and make the passages come alive, but also strengthen those hand muscles. The next thing that we're going to do, these are pretty short chapters, so it works out pretty well. But we're doing a section from Story of the World, and this just kind of brings in some chronological aspects to the stuff that we're doing. I do pause a little bit longer than some of the sections are because it doesn't spend a ton of time in ancient Asia or in ancient Americas, and so I do pause and take a little bit longer. What that means is we don't really get to the Roman histories as much, and that is in this book. So I've been trying to decide if I want to do a summer unit on Roman times and give it more of its own time, or just quickly read through the last couple of chapters at the end of the school year. That is to be decided still. Then we've got dictation spelling. I'm going to do a whole separate video on dictation spelling because it has absolutely changed the way that I see spelling and the way we do spelling, and has, like, it's just revolutionized every way that we do it. So then for art, I have printed, for the first term, the art will match the location that we're spending in. So I have some art from ancient Egypt, and then some art from ancient China. But as we go through, like, our kids at school are going to be studying a couple of different artists. And so I've included art from those also. If you would prefer to pick your own artist and not do what we're doing, you can, but I have this all, it will go out as part of the same packet. It will all be in there, and you can have these prints with it labeled here. The other option is Simply Charlotte Mason does these art packs along with art education. And so if you want to read more about each of the artists and you don't want to go digging for that stuff, her packets are phenomenal. It's high quality prints, but then along with, like, art teaching. I am not an art historian, and so I didn't even want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, but I do know where good resources are, and we'll find those and it'll work out great. So we're gonna use these. Okay, and then our reading, I've already told you about the free reading, and then each of these are things like, I just put a checkbox next to it. If your family's doing it, great, do it with us. If not, just disregard. And then, okay, I have added to this activity, but every toddler time has a different book recommendation and an activity. So the activities are things that you probably will have on hand, or hopefully have on hand. Like for our family, kinetic sand or Play-Doh. But a lot of times the activity somehow ties to what the story is about. And I did that just to kind of, like, make it fun, make your toddler feel like they're participating in school too. Okay, so then some of the weeks, so like I said, it'll be science, history, geography. So this week we have a slightly more history heavy, and then we've got a science here. Some of them will be more science, geography heavy, but I think it all balances out. That's what I've been working toward, is that eventually it all balances out. Because there was this really cool hands-on history for ancient Egypt book that I found, and I wanted them to be able to do that. So that's going to be like a secondary picture book that will add to or be an enrichment to the other spines that you're using. And each of those will have one, each day's lesson will have one of those. And then, so Copywork here is going to be from this book of animal poetry, and the other one that we're going to be using is the Gladolia Gardens poetry. And actually I have this changed, so the first 3 months we're reading Gladolia Garden poetry, and then the second 4 months we're doing books from animal poetry. But these are just really fun, cute poems, and they can choose one that they've really enjoyed to copy for their copy work. For Keaton, what I'm doing is I'm printing out what it looks like written in cursive writing. If you want that available to you, if you decide to do it, just let me know and I can send you a copy of what we're doing. But that way he doesn't have to guess what the whole word will look like in cursive format. He can just see what it looks like in cursive format. And yeah, so we'll be doing that. And then the last thing that we're doing is that is different for this day than the other 2 days is we have Handicraft. The handicrafts are going to largely be these things. So 1 month we're doing clay modeling. 1 month we're doing knot tying. And so you can either, I have it done 2 ways. You can either get this book and follow through the book with it, or I have YouTube videos linked and available, so that way you can do that. Same way with the clay modeling, you can either get this book and follow it, or you can freestyle, or I will try to have YouTube videos available. Same way with the paper sloyd, it's just paper folding. Our kids have really loved it at school. Oh, and then there'll be a month where you work on hand sewing some felt stuff, and all of those things will be, hopefully should be available either in book format or in a YouTube video format. So that's your handicraft. And then with sciences, I have a older track and a younger track available. So that way your kids are all learning similar types of thing in science, but it's not too light for your kids who are students who are older and not too heavy for the students who are younger, and yet they're still getting exposure to it. So like for instance, your younger student is going to read How a Seed Grows. That's available on YouTube. I already checked it out. And then they're going to do a notebooking page about life cycle. Now notebooking has transformed the way we do homeschool this year. So I have separate notebooks, and those will be listed in my shop also, so to be easily printed off for you to do with your kids. So there's college rule notebooking, but you have a space at the top to draw pictures and then a space to write. And then for younger students, there's wide rule with a space to draw at the top also. And so notebooking is going to be, so like if you're doing How a Seed Grows, you'll ask them what they remembered from the lesson, and then they will have the ability to draw a picture and tell you what they learned. And then for your older students, as they slowly start getting better at handwriting, they can do a sentence or two and start with that written narration. So this just gives some flexibility in the way that they're narrating. And for those of you who are in states that have to track, it gives you the ability to track what your students are learning also. Another thing that I added to these pages that you can't see in the video is I've also put at the top where you can date when you completed the lesson and how much time it took for people who are in states where that tracking is required, like you have to be in school a certain number of days and have to be working on your lessons a certain amount of time. So hopefully it just like helps provide some continuity. Then for your older students, for the kids you're learning How a Seed Grows, for the older kids, you're starting biology. And so for the most part, I tried to make sure that these lessons fit together. So you've got the Hidden Kingdom, which is talking about mushrooms and roots and some of those types of things. And as you progress, the two lessons run mostly hand in hand. The kids who are in biology, it just takes it deeper. I've looked up this book. This book says it's for 6th to 8th grade. However, for my 4th grader this year, whatever level something is for a kid to do independently, they can do it a year or two earlier if you're reading it aloud to them. So Keaton, we read through a good chunk of this book this year. We'll study it more fully next year. And it was perfectly fine. So as the teacher or the parent, you get to decide whether you're going to slide that scale up or down, how that's going to work for you and your family. So then at the very end of the month, and this is something that's not, oops, and I just crushed it too. This is something that isn't in the first printing, but it will be in all the other printings, is you've got these reflection questions at the end, and if you print it not with my old-fashioned awful printer, there'll be a gray box under each of the questions where you can analyze at the end of each month what was life-giving, what was life-taking, what's coming up, what change created growth, 3 goals for the next month, field trips we want to take, and what supplies do you need and what do we need to work on. And this just gives you an assessment at the end of each month to know what's working, what's not, so that way hopefully you can make better progress. The last thing that is intermittent throughout the entire book, and this is honestly the piece of school this past year that inspired doing all of our learning in this way, are these timelines. And so as you're learning things, what you're going to do is you're going to add it to these timelines, and this ties together the whole world for you. So by the time you're finished, you should be able to see what was happening in ancient China, what was happening in ancient Africa, what was happening in the ancient Americas by following your way through the timeline. So we really need to go quite a lot older. And being able to run those, like, when did we find out when this piece of science, like when was this piece of science discovered? When was this piece of literature written? And including all of those into your timeline so your kid has a visualization of what all of those things look like. And it's been so much fun for our family because we have had things that we did last year and the year before, and then we've come upon it again this year. And it's starting to look more full, and watching them connect the dots has just been so full of joy for me, and I can't wait to add a whole new year worth of timeline things. But all of those things are prompted in there, so you're either going to notebook or it'll tell you to add it to your timeline, and then it gives you physical record of everything. So anyway, if you have any questions or you're curious about it, let me know. If there's something like at this point that you want added to it. This year it is in a development year, and so the price is a lot cheaper than other options of resources that are similar to it, but it's because we're in a development year. And so what that means is when you purchase the curriculum, you'll be added to the development Facebook group, and any issues that you find or any books that you think should be added or any books that you think aren't actually a good fit for this or things like that are going to be like, that conversation is going to be encouraged. And then at the end of this year, with all of our input, it'll be ready to like do, I guess, full launch next year, with hopefully well over a dozen homeschool moms at this point and counting all the time. So thanks for letting me share about it, and I can't wait to learn with my kids, and I hope that this year brings you as much joy as it does me.